Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to another week of youth group online. I don't know how much longer this is going to go on for, but anyways, hasn't been too bad. I've enjoyed our video calls. Hope all of you tune in tonight for our Zoom conversation, and look forward to seeing you there. So what I want to do is I want to talk about. I want to recap what we have gone over the past so many weeks, for really the past few months, that we've gone through a few different series at youth group, and I just want to recap some of that stuff because it seems like it's easy to just get a lesson and then the next week move on to the next one and forget what we talked about last week, and then same thing over and over again. Just keep forgetting what we went over and never really apply some of that stuff to our lives, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially in light of the things that we've talked about. We talked about Christian basics, things, disciplines in the Christian life, um, just to establish that we could grow, and that every Christian really needs. So just to go over some of that stuff, we talked about daily Bible reading. We talked about prayer, memorizing scripture, consistently attending church and youth group, reading good Christian books, getting accountability, sharing the gospel, our testimony, being generous, having a lifestyle of generosity. And then Jason talked about a lifestyle of worship. And so we talk about all those different types of. There's more than that, but those are just, man. If you could apply those things to your life and get some sort of rhythm with those things, it would be a big deal. So the reason that I bring this up is because now you have some extra time to plan. You're at home. A lot of you are stuck at home. You have a lot of time to think, and I just want you to make the most of this time. And so now will be a few weeks, like I don't know how many weeks ago, I did a lesson where I talked about writing out a growth plan of some sort, where you kind of get pen, paper, write down, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to read the Bible every day for 10 minutes. I want to pray for 5 minutes. I want to memorize one verse a week. I want to write out my testimony and pray for some people that I can share the gospel with. I'm going to commit to attending youth group weekly. So, actually writing out, I'm talking about getting out a pen, paper, writing out a plan that you can, and then getting accountability to that plan. Okay, getting someone to hold you accountable to that plan. So, anyways, I hope you guys will take some time and do that. It would just be a big deal, and we all need planning. Is not a bad thing; it's a good thing. Most of us need it. But today, I want to talk about something similar, something that you can add to that to your life. One of the Christian basic, which is serving. And I'm talking about, a lifestyle of serving, a perspective, a heart of serving in general. Like, I'm talking about you taking on kind of the nature of a servant, not just like, well, I do this at church or I do that at church, which is awesome and it's important. But I'm talking about just a whole outlook on life and yourself, that type of perspective. So the reason that I wanted to talk about that is this week is the week of Passover, and I was reading the story. I was reading some of that because leading up to Easter here on Sunday, and last week was Palm Sunday, and I was reading the account in the Gospels of what happened. Jesus came riding into town on a donkey, and he went into the temple, and he overthrew the money changers and things like that, and he was healing people, and it's leading up to his death here. And so I was reading the story of the Last Supper that he had with his disciples, which maybe you want to call the Last Dinner. Okay, it's good, traditionally called the Last Supper, but a lot of you use the word dinner. Anyway, so he's with his disciples, and he's eating with them. And in the middle of the meal, he gets up, and it says he gets a basin of water, and he starts washing the disciples' feet. And in that culture, people were walking around in sandals. Things were a little dirtier where they were walking. They weren't driving in a car, okay, and they didn't have sneakers on. So they're walking from place to place. They have sandals on. Their feet are getting dirty. So a lot of times when they would come into a home, there would be like a servant there that would wash their feet, so that they're not tracking dirt in the place, and things don't stink as bad. They're eating dinner. You don't want to smell people's feet when you're eating dinner. All kinds of things like that. So there's cultural reasons that we really don't have any. This is not something we practice in our culture in a normal way. Maybe some churches do it, which I'm going to talk about a little bit, but because of this story in the Bible. But you got to understand. Think about this for a second. Jesus is God. Like Jesus is literally God. And he's eating dinner with his disciples. And he gets up and he starts washing their feet. I mean, could you imagine God showing up at your house and or you're hanging out with God, right? And God's like, I'm gonna wash your feet. I mean, that's just an amazing thing. It just really goes to show God's humility. I mean, it really just goes to show his humility that the God of the universe, the one who created us, the one who's over everything, the all-powerful God, would stoop down that low and do something that a servant would do. Pretty much like one of the lowest jobs you can do as a servant is wash people's feet. I mean, it's just a stinky, dirty job. And for God to do that for his disciples and set that example is just unbelievable. And the thing is, they should have been serving him. We should be serving God, right? But the thing is, I think that God wants us to know, and Jesus wanted his disciples to know, listen, yeah, you should be serving me, but you need me to serve you. You need me to do this for you. What I'm about to do, some of it I think is looking ahead there to the cross. He's about to die in just a few days. And he's saying to them, listen, you need to be washed by me. Okay, I know you should be serving me, but if I don't wash you, then you're not going to be saved. There's nothing you could do. No amount of service is going to save you. I have to clean you. And that's one of the things I think he's looking ahead to. But he is also just teaching them, he's giving them an example of that they need to be servants. In Matthew, this is what I want you guys to do. First of all, I want you guys to read John chapter 13. That's what I'm talking about, the Last Supper. So do that on your own. I'm not going to read it. It'll take too much time. And so I want you to read that on your own. Okay, John chapter 13. Get out a pen. Pause the video if you need to. Get out a pen. Write this down. John chapter 13. Read the account of the Last Supper there. And then also read Matthew 20:28, Matthew 20:28, and Philippians 2:5 through 7. So Matthew 20:28, Philippians 2:5 through 7. Those are verses that are all going to be go hand in hand with this lesson. And I want you to read them on your own and just have some thoughts. So tonight when we talk on the phone, you can share some of the thoughts you had about those verses and about this lesson. So after Jesus washes their feet, because he says, in Matthew 20:28, he says, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. And in Philippians 2:5 through 7, he says, Jesus, who being in the very nature God, in other words, Jesus being God, humbled himself and became a servant. Now, those are just verses to support what's happening here. But after Jesus washes their feet, he says to them, he says, listen, you should do to others as I have done for you. And so I guess, what I want to challenge you guys with is this. Are you willing to wash someone's feet? Now, I don't mean that literally, although I would say that, I'll talk about that in a second. But the question is, are you willing to serve others? Are you willing to have that perspective on life, that attitude of humility and service for others? Is that what your life is all about? I want you to ask yourself that. And the funny thing is, I would say one of the ways you can figure out what type of attitude you have and what you're like and what your perspective on life is like, if you actually would wash someone's feet. Like, would you do that? Would you wash your brother or your sister's feet or your parents' feet? I know it seems it's awkward, it's weird, it's something, it's just not in our culture. So you guys are probably like, that's disgusting. I would never do that. I get it, right? I get it. I don't want to wash anyone's feet either. But God literally washed his disciples' feet. He literally washed their feet. It wasn't like some figurative thing. He did it. Would you be willing to do that? What kind of attitude must you have? What kind of humility must you have to be willing to, it's humiliating. First of all, you got to get down kind of like on your knees. Like you're like bowing down to someone basically. Their feet are like right there in your face. And then you're washing them with your hands. It really is an amazing thing. Sorry, just making sure this is still rolling here. Sorry, guys. So, it's an amazing thing that Jesus would do that God would do that for them. But really, he took it a step further. He didn't just wash their feet. He suffered and he died for them and for us. He took it way further than just washing. What's washing feet compared to being tortured and being willing to die for others, especially people who didn't deserve it, right? Which is us. So um, I want you guys to think about that. I want you to ask yourself, would I be willing to do that? And and not just washing feet. That's not what, like I said earlier. It's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a lifestyle of serving, of servitude, an attitude of humility. And I think that right now, you guys are home. I'm home, right? We're all pretty much stuck at home. And I think we've been asking questions like, how are you feeling? What are you going through? What's your perspective? And those are all good things. But even when you're home like this and you're trying to ask good questions, it's easy to be selfish. Like, how do I feel? What do I think? How do I need it? It's I, me. And even now, while you're at home, you could have this attitude of serving others. Like, who in your home can you serve? What could you do for others? And then when we're done with all this and we go about our normal lives again, can you take that attitude with you of like, you know what? I want to be a person like Jesus. Like he says, listen, do to others. Basically, he says you should do what I've done for you. You should serve one another. That's who my people. That's what my people should be like. You should be servants. And so I really want you to think, how can you serve someone today? Like, what can you do right now at home? How could you serve your siblings, your parents? How could you do that? I mean, and you should. It would just be a neat thing if you were like, you know what? Like, my goal is to make those around me, to make their lives better. I want to do everything I can I want to serve. I just want to serve them. I'm gonna think about their needs before my own. I'm gonna put their desires before my own. I'm just gonna do things to make their life better. Not because they asked me. I'm not trying to get any brownie points. Just because I actually care about them more than myself, and I'm just gonna do stuff, take initiative to serve. How could you do that today? And so I don't want this to be. This is the end of the lesson. I didn't want this to be a long one. I just wanted you guys to think about that, to get out of your, the selfish perspective. Not saying you're selfish. I'm just saying it's easy to be selfish at all times, and even now is no different. And to add this to the basics of Christianity that we've been talking about, add it to the list of all these things you can incorporate into your life. But this is really a whole life perspective saying, and there's something so freeing about being like, God, you were willing to serve me. You were willing to become a servant, to die for me, and I want to do the same for others. And there's something when you give that over to God and you kind of say, because you might be asking, what am I going to do with my life? What do I want to be? What do I want to accomplish? That's all great, and that's good. There's good questions, but there's something really freeing about humbling yourself and just saying, God, I just want to serve others. I want to make other people's lives better by just serving them. I want to encourage them. I want to bless people. I want to become less than. And when you could do that, there's something freeing that takes place in your heart, and it's really an amazing thing. And so, anyways, how can you serve someone this week? Come prepared tonight to share how you can do that. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I miss you guys, and hope we can get back to normal soon. So God bless you. I'll see you tonight.